Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to the Morning Mindfulness Podcast. I am Alicia Davies, your host, your breathwork coach, and your happiness enthusiast. I am here to share with you tips and tricks on living a healthier, happier, and more fulfilling life. And in today's podcast, I really want to just bring focus to cold exposure, its benefits, how to do it, when to do it, how long to do it for, what's the optimal temperature. All your questions are going to be answered in today's podcast. And the reason why I really wanted to talk about this topic today is because it has become such a popular modality that everybody is adopting, which is fantastic. I freaking love that. I'm all about that. However, there isn't much clarity on safe ways to practice this modality, and it can be really dangerous if you do it without any knowledge behind what you're doing. So basically, I'm just going to shed some light on this so that you can practice this safely. And if you haven't done this before and you haven't done any kind of cold exposure, how do you begin and how can you do it safely? For starters, I just want to get out of the way the dangers of purposeful cold exposure, and that is straight up hypothermia. Hypothermia can occur if you are in too extreme cold temperatures, and everybody's susceptibility to the cold really varies, and that's why it is really difficult for anyone to straight up be able to give a generalized, this is the temperature that you go in, this is how long you go for, because it is impossible, because everybody's threshold is different. The Huberman Lab podcast, Huberman himself gave a really good kind of like golden rule of the 5 walls. I'm gonna kind of utilize the same approach here, but a little bit different, more adapted to like how I assess how cold something should be and how long I should stay in for myself, and what I advise my clients when we are doing ice baths. So getting into the podcast. Right. I'm not going to lie. I've done this. I've tried to record this so many times and I have just like not been feeling it at all. I've been just so in my head about trying to sound professional as possible. And I'm just going to be real with you guys. I'm not a naturally really professionally sounding person. I just speak from my heart, and so that's what we're going to go with today. I had all this stuff written down, but I'm just going to, I'm going to go with the flow, and I'm going to talk about what I think is relevant, and let's do this. So starters, let's set the scene for how we are as a race at the moment, why cold exposure could be beneficial to us. Well, if you think about it, we are creatures of comfort now. We live in a society where we want convenience at our fingertips, and if we don't get it, we feel really entitled, like we should be getting it. And I can speak that from experience as someone who's even quite mindful. I do find myself being disgruntled by the little things of ordering my Uber Eats on my ass, sitting on my couch, and when the Uber driver arrives and he calls me from the ground level and I'm on the 6th floor and asks me to come down to collect it, I get a little bit pissed off. I know that I shouldn't, but that is just the way of the world. We are in this cycle of entitlement and living in comfort and convenience. Really ashamed to be admitting that out loud, but I know that I've done it. So that is just setting the tone for how we are in our everyday lives, right? That I'm a person of one, I'm an opinion of one, but I guarantee the listeners right now, majority of you would be able to relate that we don't have that mental grit naturally. We don't naturally want to be uncomfortable. You don't choose the harder option. If the easier option is there, we go for the easier option naturally. And so when we are cold, we sit near a heater or we grab a blanket. When we're hot, we go to the aircon. So when we're in a world where we are living and changing our environment to suit us, we also lose the ability to adapt, to change. We lose that ability to overcome challenges in everyday life. And that may sound like I'm getting a little bit off track, but it all applies with everything. And that is why I think cold exposure is so amazing, because not only is it, yes, amazing for professional athletes that want to lower their inflammation and increase endurance and increase muscle recovery and all that fantastic stuff, but that doesn't necessarily apply to the majority of the population. They're kind of like, well, I'm not a professional athlete, right? So what's in it for me? Why would I be going out of my way to be getting into extreme temperatures to reap what benefit? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. How you can use cold exposure to increase mental clarity, mental resilience, and grit, along with all the other benefits. So let's just talk to just frequent exposure to cold and how it is linked to a number of different health benefits. And scientists have found evidence that exposure to cold speeds up your metabolism, for one. Another benefit of exposing body to cold is that it reduces your inflammation, your swelling, and your sore muscles, which is what I was saying that many athletes use ice baths for. But furthermore, cold body therapy is also linked to improved quality of sleep, focus, and immune response. I'm doing it again. I've lost my train of thought again. Okay, so how can you start practicing cold therapy today if this is like, just say you're at the very beginning of your journey? Where do you start? Cold showers, my friend. Cold showers is where you start. 30 seconds at the end of a shower. You can have it on hot the whole time. I'm not asking you to go straight into the cold. And then right at the end, just turn on that resilience a little bit. Put on your 30-second timer. Turn the water on for just cold for 30 seconds. And you need the timer there, because I guarantee you, if you don't have it there, you won't stay in the whole 30 seconds. You'll think that the 5 seconds is 30. Your mind likes to play tricks on you when you're uncomfortable. That is just the beginning. And ice baths are like an extreme level of cold exposure, right? You don't necessarily need to be going to the extreme cold to reap the benefits. The cold showers do show amazing benefits from just increased mood, and I can speak to that from my own experience, that when I first get into a cold shower in the morning, my mood changes. I am just a happier, more pleasant person to be around. I also feel like I'm woken up, like I feel so much more alert, whereas if I'm first getting out of bed, especially with like a really stressful day ahead, I tend to want to stay in bed. So if I apply my 5-second rule, I jump out of bed, I get into the shower, and then I'm instantly switched on. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. It's almost that mental switch of like, you've already tackled that number one thing for the day. You're raring and ready to go. It's like a mindset. So how do you know how long you need to stay in the shower for? Like I said, 30 seconds is fine. How cold does it need to be? Do not have a smidgen of hot on. Just have your cold on. It does, I think, it, of course, so that's your first baby step into cold exposure, is just a cold shower. Studies have shown that a cold shower for just 30 seconds increases alertness through exposure to short bouts of stress, activating the sympathetic nervous system, also known as your fight and flight. And you're probably thinking to me, thinking right now, like, Alicia, why would I want to expose myself to stress first thing in the morning? Like, that doesn't make any sense, especially when majority of the stuff that I teach in my classes is how to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest. But small bouts of stress, small itsy bitsy tiny little control bouts of activation of the sympathetic nervous system is really healthy. It's a good way to create a mental switch in your mind to be able to go into sympathetic, back to parasympathetic, controlled and consciously. So as long as you're purposely putting that stress on yourself, you're able to purposely bring yourself back into the parasympathetic. Like I said, creating that really amazing, easy to use mental switch where you can go, I'm safe now. And that's where we get into a little bit more of releasing the endorphins, improving the mood. You can also increase your immune system by increased production of white blood cells. And if you don't know what that means, it basically means that when you have more white blood cells present in the blood, it means that you are less susceptible to disease, less susceptible to inflammatory diseases. You're less susceptible to having an environment where you're more likely to get sick. So who doesn't want to basically boost your immune system? It also lowers your heart rate by 15%. There's been a lot of issues around increased heart rate ever since the COVID vaccine got out. I don't want to really touch on that because that's really, really controversial. But if you are someone that is focused on that, do be aware that the ice bars does lower it. So if that's something that you're looking for to heal, go try cold exposure. It also increases your metabolism by 9%. So once you have tackled the cold shower, so say you have only just started and now you've tackled the cold shower, what is the next step? Well, for you to be really reaping the benefits, it needs to be a mental challenge for the sake of what I'm talking about, increasing that mental grit. So you need to be aware that when you're getting in to the cold, it needs to be enough of a shock for you to be uncomfortable. It needs to be a little bit of discomfort for you to be like, I kind of want to get out. Initially, your first thought is, this is not it. I don't want to be in this. And that's how you measure your tolerance to begin with. So for me, getting into a cold shower is not uncomfortable anymore. I prefer a cold shower over a hot shower. So I no longer reap the mental benefits of doing a cold shower because I've built up my cold threshold because of how often I do an ice bath. So once you've kind of gotten to that point where you feel like you're not reaping the benefits from a cold shower anymore, or you want to even just push it a little bit more and increase the challenge, this is where I would recommend you now trialing the ice baths. And this is really important because there are health centers popping up all over the place with ice baths available, but even the ice bath that I go to at a local gym, there is absolutely no instructions. There's no health safety precautions. I was not guided whatsoever. Luckily, I already knew, but there was no guidance whatsoever how to practice cold exposure safely, which I think is really, really dangerous. So how do you now increase that threshold safely? I would recommend just trialing the first 30 seconds, getting in for 30 seconds, seeing how you're feeling, jumping out, doing a little bit of heat exposure. Maybe you want to go into a sauna, maybe you want to go jump into a shower, and then jumping back in. Why am I just talking shit?